Hi, this is Sanjay Gangal from EDACafe. I'm here with Mark Gilbert, President of EDA Careers. Hello, Mark.
How are you, Sanjay? We're back at another DAC in Austin, beautiful Austin, a little different than California. I love it.
That's great. So what are your thoughts on DAC?
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's different than California. The layout, the floor plan here is totally different than California. Big, long aisles, and not a lot of them. Traffic seems to be somewhat suspect. I think the conferences are doing well. The floor itself, marginally busy. But then again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the people that you want to see are here. And this is not a consumer show, so you can't gauge attendance at DAC by the same way you would if consumers were coming here, because it's just a different metric. And the difference is that here you have a limited, finite number of customers that are using the tools, and you're hoping that they walk in your booth and drop a few $1 million, and they usually walk around with cash. I don't know if you knew that or not. And I guess most of these guys are just hoping that that's what happens, and it is. It is.
And now Doug will be in Austin again next year. What are your thoughts about that?
That was an interesting choice, and I kind of was scooped on that. Before it was released, I actually was talking to one of the top dogs at DAC, and he says, hey, Mark, we're going to do Austin again next year. And I said, are you out of your mind? 2 years in a row? He said, yeah, I mean, and he's giving me the reasons, and obviously cost is a factor. Obviously, making sure that the Austin market, which is probably the second biggest tech hub in the U.S., is a factor. And they want to make sure they're giving good representation to all of them. I don't know how good of a move it is, because it frustrates all the West Coast companies, which is the predominance of where most of the companies are located. So you see a big amount of these companies having to spend a lot of money to bring people to Austin versus having to drive up the road. Even from Southern California, it's still a drive. So there's some hesitancy on the part of a lot of the vendors, but overall it seems to be pretty good.
And what are the latest changes you're seeing in the EDA landscape?
Wow, it's been real interesting because, as you know, Sanjay, the landscape changed. You go back to EDA in the early days with aerospace and just general computer work, building laptops and building desktops and all the servers that were necessary. And you watch the growth kind of spiral into the mobile sector, into the networking sector. And now you're seeing a big kind of a movement into automotive, which has been huge. I mean, we all know what's coming down the road, and some people like to say 20, 30 years. I say probably 5 to 10 years down the road, where you're going to have self-driving vehicles in mass production. And it's not only self-driving vehicles, it's the safety of these vehicles. And that's going to increase exponentially dramatically, because you're already seeing in the insurance industry how much these safeguards that have been built in today have decreased the amount of crashes that are on the road. And you're going to see a lot more of that as we move forward, where the safety of the vehicle will be automatic, preventing numerous car crashes because of the sensors that will be built in. And then, of course, we talk about the infotainment centers and all the things that are being built in. Those are all EDA-centric. And that's the new frontier for EDA that I think is huge. And of course the Internet of Things is gigantic as well, and EDA has been drifting a lot into that. You're seeing a lot more of the intersecting highways where a lot of the developers have the skill sets to marry the two. So I think those are the two big areas of growth for EDA and what'll drive this industry. One of the things that I think concerns a lot of people is, when it comes to EDA, is how do you top out? What happens as you continue this growth? And the answer is that you find new frontiers, and that's what we keep doing. We keep reinventing ourselves. We keep getting bigger and stronger, and we never have down quarters. So I don't know how anybody could be complaining about EDA.
Okay. And how can, if somebody is looking for a job, it's very hard job environment still, how can somebody improve the chances of getting hired?
You're right. It is. It's a tough market out there, Sanjay. It's very difficult to find the right candidate. It's hard for companies to find the right candidate, and it's hard for candidates to find the matching companies. And of course, it's always about a marriage. It's always about timing. But some of the things that you can do to make sure that you're considered is make sure your resume is as complete as possible. It's no different than a profile on Facebook, on LinkedIn. The less you put in your profile, the more interesting your profile is. And the same certainly holds true for a resume. The more interesting you make your resume, the more searches that you qualify for, gives you that much better of a chance. I've said it before, remember that most of the resumes are first viewed today by HR or by a recruiter internally that maybe doesn't specialize in EDA. And if you're a synthesis guy or a simulation guy or certain flavors of spice, or we can go on and on between the front end, the back end, analog, all that, if you don't have all that information, every kind of buzzword that's important, that's centric to who you are as an engineer, you have no chance of getting pulled out. Because the days of getting a resume in and looking at it and reading it are over. It's all done automatically by a computer. It dissects your resume, it puts you in. When I'm looking for somebody, I can put in application engineer, I can put in all the different specifics and get really down to match the rec as close as possible. If your resume doesn't have all that information, guess what? You're not coming up in the search. Guess what? You're not getting the call.
Okay, and when somebody does get the interview call, what are some of the mistakes people can avoid to improve the chances of getting hired?
Yeah, we were talking about that a little earlier, like how many easy, basic, simple mistakes people make. And I'm talking about all of you out there with your almost stupidity. And it's the vice presidents that are worse than anybody else. It's unbelievable. There's some really easy things. The first thing is, remember that this is about the company and not about you. So on the first round of interviews, you want to get them to like you. Don't worry about it the other way around. That'll come. If they like you, everything else follows suit real easily, real nicely. What you want to do at the beginning is to make sure that you answer their questions to their satisfaction, that you know about who they are and what they're doing. I had a guy go into an interview, and he opens the interview, so tell me more about what you guys are doing. That interview lasted 5 minutes. I mean, it's that simple. So you want to make sure that you know that you've reviewed the website and that you've read some white papers on the company. Maybe you looked up some of the officers in the company so to see, maybe you work with them somewhere, or you have a friend that they may be friends with. There's so much stuff that you can do to be prepared. How about preparing something to go into the interview with to impress them even more? So in the first round, you don't ask about title, you don't ask about money, you don't ask about anything but what they want to hear. You're excited to go to work for them. You know they have a great product. You know they have a great company. Answer their questions. Don't worry about your needs, because if they like you, all of that will follow.
That's great. And what do you think of state of EDA today, and what do you think is going to happen in a year?
Boy, you ask tough questions, Sanjay. I'll tell you, it's hard to have a crystal ball. I mean, obviously, who would have thought that the sectors that are so powerful today would have been 5 years ago? I don't know that I have necessarily a crystal ball to predict, but what I do know is that EDA continues to grow quarter after quarter, year after year. And it never has a down year, and the growth is considerable. Okay, it might not be internet growth, and a lot of people forget that internet growth and all that is all of recent times, that the sustained growth that EDA has had is a more normal growth for business, and it's continual. I think you're going to see the continuance of acquisitions, which is problematic to our business, but there are still so many smaller companies doing parts of the pie. And I think you're going to see more and more of these smaller companies start to form partnerships with other smaller companies so they can offer a little bit bigger piece of the pie when they go in and make a presentation, making it a little easier for them to compete with Synopsys, Cadence, Mentor. So I think that'll continue, and I think EDA has a nice long run. I know as far as the second half of this year, it's been much busier, so we had a little bit of a lull coming into the beginning of the year, and now we're seeing hiring picking up at a pretty impressive rate. And I'm hearing that from everybody here. The people that I'm talking to all seem to be pretty happy with the way business is. So I think EDA has some strong sustainability for a while to come.
That's great. Do check out EDAcareers.com, EDA-careers.com for a lot more information about Mark's company, and as well as check out his column on EDACafe, the EDA Careers column. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming over to talk to us. Have a great show.
Thanks, Sanjay. Always great to see you.